Alright, so this seminar is about measurements and testing. And the point of measuring and testing is to be able to predict the future. So, and it's kind of like basically science, like science measures things. And when you can measure something well enough and you see an occurrence happen, you can look back at those data points that you had measured before and then predict that that thing will happen again. So we're talking about your human body, and the other purpose of measuring is to see the results from your past work. And it's always about 2 data points. So if your cholesterol is 205, your MD will badger you to get on a cholesterol lowering drug. But what if your cholesterol was 260 4 months earlier, and you change your diet, you went keto or low carb, and your cholesterol started dropping from 260 to 205 in 4 months, which is very possible. That means what you're doing is working, and you absolutely don't need the cholesterol lowering drug because you're on your way. But when you go from 260 to 250 to 230 to 205, they're going to badger you because they only look at 1 data point, right? But you got to at least look at 2, and you compare those 2. All right, so if what you are doing is working, keep going. Okay, so I've seen this before where somebody is getting better, but it's not fast enough for them. And they say, what else can I do? The answer is it's working. Keep doing what you're doing. And if I know something that'll help you get better, we can add that, we can enhance it. But that just happened today. Somebody's getting a little bit better. It's only been 2 weeks and she's disappointed. And she wants to know what else can I do, and she's ready to scrap everything else. So I told her, you're getting better. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not getting better, then you got to change it. Okay, so there's 2 main tests for chronic disease. So in the clinical world that I live in, we're testing chronic. We're taking time to heal the body up. Okay, this is not the place where you come for your life-saving surgery after a car accident. Right? This is long-term stuff. And the 2 main tests for chronic disease are, number 1, postprandial insulin. And what that means is after you've consumed sugar, they measure your insulin for a period of 3 hours or something until you can change that. You make it 2 hours. And even if you just did fasting insulin, you walk in the morning into the lab, you walk in, you haven't had breakfast, they draw your blood, they test your fasting insulin. Okay, that number right there is very valuable, and it should be like 5 or 6 or 7, not 25. The medical normal is up to 25, but that's just way too high. So 5 or 6 would be really good. And then you consume 75 milligrams of sugar, and then they test your insulin. I'll show you a graph on that later. And the other test is the coronary artery calcium score, and that's done at your local hospital. It's really inexpensive. St. Joe's here in Ypsilanti, that's $100, and I can order that for you. And if you're watching elsewhere in the country or the world, you got to go through your cardiologist or your medical doctor, and they don't normally recommend it because it's so cheap. The alternative is where they put a stent through, not a stent, catheter through your leg up into your heart, and they pump dye into your heart, and they're looking for blocked arteries in your heart. And that costs $9,000. And but with the coronary artery calcium score, that is the only test that sees the heart disease. Everything else shows signs or symptoms or part of the problem, but the coronary artery calcium score sees the disease. It's the only one. Okay, and then so these are the tests I'm going to go through. Precision Extra to measure ketones in the body, keto sticks, visual contrast screening, heavy metals, urine test, pulse oximeter. Okay, so let's go through these. The first one is the Precision Extra, and I'm recommending that you buy this. And if you're serious about your health, it's super inexpensive. It's $32 right now on Amazon. And there's other machines like this. And you can see that's what the device looks like. This one measures glucose and ketones. You have to buy 2 different sticks for it. You prick your blood, let the machine read it, then you do some math. I have a whole video on it called How to Use Precision Extra, and it's spelled XTRA. So that's the ketone sticks right there. It's that kind of color. The glucose sticks are a blue color, and that's the poker that comes with it to poke your skin and get the blood. And on this one it says it's 0.9. This ketone reading is 0.9, and the lowest it'll go is 0.1, which is where everybody's at if you're not working on getting into ketosis. And then when you're in ketosis, it's going to be like 3 to 7. And there's different opinions and there's different charts, but true therapeutic ketosis, you're at least at 3 with this ketone meter. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. So, now the glucose sticks are $1 each. Get that on Amazon. And the ketone sticks are anywhere from $2 to $10 a piece, depending on the supplier at the time, depending on how good of a shopper you are. And I wrote the little equation here. You get that ketone number divided by 18.016, divided by the glucose. And the ratio that is called, that's actually backwards, I'm sorry. It's GKI, it's glucose first, divided by 18.016, divided by ketones. That ratio should be less than 1 to be in true therapeutic ketosis. If you're at 50, that's normal. Everybody's at 50. You work on getting into ketosis, you go to 25 and 10 and 4. So the closer you get to 1, the better off you are. Then you want to get below 1. Okay, so if your ketones are at 3 to 5, your glucose could be as low as 45, which is totally fine. But in the hospital, they may think you're going to die, but you're not, because your ketones are up. That's the other fuel. You got fat and you got sugar, and ketones are made from fat. And when those ketones are up and your cells are using ketones, all kinds of great, fantastic changes occur. It kills cancer cells. When all the cells are burning fat, they clean the fat out of your body, out of your liver, out of your arteries, out of your pancreas, out of your belly, out of your legs. It's the reversal of when you're eating the standard American diet and you're putting on weight. It's just like a bear eating berries and salmon and, this big mixture of food through the summer and fall. They're putting on weight, and then they sleep it off in the wintertime. They're in ketosis. So as Americans, we're just putting on weight year after year after year. Now at some point you got to burn it off. So you can do that by changing your diet. I'm not going to get into that today. You can do it with endurance exercise. You can do it with fasting. Okay. So that's Precision Extra. So it's something you can do at home, and it's very easy. Just have to work with it and practice with it. So you can do keto sticks. This is one version of this is a urine test for ketones. And you just pee on the end of the stick, and then you look at the color of it, and you compare that with the colors on the side of the bottle. And if it's heavy, like purple, that means a lot of ketones are coming out of the body. And if it's light, that means that there's negative or mild ketones coming out of the body. Okay, so now if an Eskimo does this test, and they're eating whale blubber and seal fat for 9 months or 10 months out of the year, you would think that they're in ketosis. They pee on the stick, it's not going to be heavy ketones coming out of their urine. It's going to be very light. Why is that? It's because their bodies are using all the ketones. They're being used up, so they're not coming out in the urine. So picture a diabetic who's got a lot of sugar in their blood and it's spilling out. That sugar's not being used. Okay, that's a bad thing. But with the Eskimos, they're not spilling out ketones, they're using it all up. Now at the beginning, when you start to get into ketosis and you do this test, it'll be purple, it'll be like heavy ketones or whatever. That means your body's making the ketones and it's coming out. It's not all being used up. So, but over the course of a year and 2 years and longer, you're training your body to utilize the ketones. Right? So if you do the Precision Extra and you have high ketones in your blood, and then you do the urine stick and you have no ketones in your urine, that means your body is utilizing all the ketones in your blood. Cool? Does that make sense? Raise your hand if that's new for you. Did you know that?
Yeah,
we talked about that? All right, good. All right, cool. All right, and this is very cheap. They're both cheap. Okay. And I want to say that for dinner I had keto ice cream.
What kind?
It's heavy whipping cream. And I'm going to show you what the numbers are on this keto ice cream. So it was a cup and a half. It was from heavy whipping cream. There was some honey in it. That was a sweetener. And a patient made it for me. I'm not going to turn that down. That was my dinner. Yeah, I don't want to be rude. Okay. So it was 153 grams of fat. Grams of fat. It's a lot of fat, right? Yeah, it's really good. And then 33 grams of carbs. I'll just put grams of C like that. And then 4.5 grams of protein. Okay, so the way you look at this is you got to compare the fat versus the protein plus carbs. Because carbs burn like sugar and protein acts like sugar. Protein keeps the sugar up and it prevents ketone formation. So you add these up and you're at 37.5. Okay, so what's the ratio here? It's a 4-to-1 ratio. That's very ketogenic. That's like an avocado, or even better than an avocado. Macadamia nuts are 5-to-1 ratio. Heavy whipping cream is 6-to-1 ratio. Okay. Nuts are like a 1-to-1 ratio, as a general rule. Cheese is around 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. And I have this good fat bar, and we just released it recently. And this is called Ketodemia. So it's got macadamia nuts in it. The base is cacao butter, and it's got cocoa powder, and it's sweetened with monk fruit. Monk fruit is a non-carbohydrate sweetener, and it's called the Immortal's fruit, or Buddha fruit. And cacao butter is called food of the gods. So it's very religious. The Ketodemia bar is 6.5-to-1 ratio, so very ketogenic also, 6.5-to-1. Alright, and there's a few foods that are like this, and of course butter and oils, all the healthy oils are very ketogenic, like 20-to-1, something like that. Alright, so anyways, this is how you look at it. You got to look at the fat versus protein plus carbs. And I've been saying this since January on my YouTube channel, and I look at the other people who talk about it, and they don't do this yet, and I hope that they do, because they kind of miss out on the protein part. They're going with the dietetics. I don't want to get into it, but this is the way you do it. It makes it super simple. There's no percentages. It's just grams. It's just straight grams. Okay, so moving on. All right. The Precision Extra, that measures glucose, and when I get into... Okay, so you can measure glucose in your blood, and it could be normal, but you can still be diabetic. And here's why. Because your insulin can be too high. So there's a guy named Dr. Kraft, K-R-A-F-T, and he's recently passed away, but his whole career was working on this. And I want to write his name down because it's worth it. Dr. Kraft. You can Google search Dr. Kraft insulin. So the normal, this is postprandial insulin, this is 5 hours, this is fasting, and then you consume sugar. The normal pattern is blue, so it goes up, it rises up, and then it goes down, and it stays down like that for 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour right there. And the starting point here is low, which is good, 5, let's say. This is insulin level, in micro international units per milliliter. Okay, so the 3 other patterns are diabetes. So you have where it starts out low, and it goes too high for too long, and it comes down. And this yellow one starts out low, and it goes too high, and it stays too high, just like that. These are the common patterns. There's only 4 common patterns. And then the last one, it starts off too high. This starts off over 50, stays too high, like that. It ends up too high at the end. Okay, you can have normal postprandial glucose, and yet your insulin can be off. That means you're diabetic. All right, so to check glucose and say, oh, pre-diabetic. No, there's no such thing as pre-diabetic. It's all about insulin. Where's your insulin? So this is the best test. It's postprandial, and you follow that pattern and see where you're at. Okay, and this is hardly ever done. All right. So this is the best test for blood sugar imbalance, insulin imbalance. Now, insulin, when it's too high, it's a very dangerous hormone, and all the research shows it. Like, inflammation is a marker of it, and disease is a marker of it, and weakness of the connective tissue, and then muscles get weak and small. Okay, so there you go. This is extremely important. All right, I'm going to move on. All right, so I'm going to move on to this next machine. It's a little device like this. I think the price was around $50. It's a pulse oximeter. So you may have seen this before, where you put your finger in and turn it on, and it gives you your pulse. But what this one has extra is the perfusion index. It's a percentage, and it means it's measuring like how well the blood perfuses through the arteries. Okay, and when I look at mine, so it's at 8.7, 9.2, 9. So it climbs up 10.2, 10.9, 11.3, and this is the pattern. It'll go up, and then it'll start to come down. And so ideally it goes up to 20, and then it'll go back down to whatever, and then it'll go back up again and back down again. So mine went up to 11.5, and now it's down to 6.3, and now it's climbing back up 6.6, here's 7.2. And anyways, so you want that diversity in the perfusion of the arteries. Now when I test this on sick people, theirs goes up to 1, 1.1, 1.2, and then it goes back down, 0.9, 0.8, 0.7. Okay? And then I'll take some herbs, like rhodiola or turmeric or something, and take it, and it goes 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, it goes up to 20, like really, really fast. So the herbs are like the oxygen is getting in the blood, and the blood circulation is improving. Okay. So now I'm mentioning this because I talk about lactic acidosis. That's the mechanism of chronic disease, and that's where you have too much waste products. I'll do a W like this, versus oxygen in the blood. The waste is too high, the oxygen is too low. So that's a way, to measure the oxygen in your blood and the body's ability to get that across. Okay, super easy. Okay, next one. So the next test is heavy metals test. Genova is one company. There's Doctor's Data. There's a bunch of other companies that measure heavy metals in the body. Now, in medicine, they test your blood. And if it comes back high with mercury or lead or whatever, that means you just had an acute reaction or acute poisoning. And after about 5 days, that reading can disappear. And what they say is, oh, you're now cured. Your body got rid of the mercury or the lead. Well, that's not necessarily true, because the lead will go into your fat cells. The metal will go into your fat cells, which includes your brain, because your brain is very fatty. It includes your bone marrow, because that's very fatty, and it gets stuck in your body. All right, so how do you test for this? It's a urine test, but you can't just collect urine for 24 hours. You have to challenge it. It's a provocative test. So you're provoking the metals. And we have a system to measure that. So you take some pills, and then you have your first morning urine, okay, and then you start collecting for 6 hours or 24 hours, depending on which lab we're running. And then you send that, you're doing this at home, then you send some samples off to the lab, and then it comes back with the reading. So in this one, this person's mercury is at almost 30, and it's in this range. It's too high. Rubidium is too high. There's several here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There's aluminum, that's too high. Lead is too high. So lead and mercury absolutely are commonly found. And lead will, they'll stay in the bone. Mercury stays in the brain. Lead stays in the bones. If you got lead in your bones, you could detox for years, 5 years or more to get that out. And just eating zucchini from your organic garden is not going to do it, although it may taste good. You got to do some modern scientific stuff. You got to do it the right way. Okay, So heavy metals. This is super important and completely ignored at your hospital. Most, like that's the thing about the stuff I talk about. I can't believe all these very important things are ignored by our medical society. Okay. This is called the Visual Contrast Screening Test, VCStest.com. There's a free version of this at that website. And it's developed by a guy named Shoemaker. Here's my version. You can get it tested here in the office. We charge $49 to do it, or you could do it free online. Okay, does this show up all right on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, but you can see here, you got these lines that go up. They're either going straight up, or to the left, or to the right. Now, this is not a 20/20 vision test. It's a contrast. So how well can your eyes and your optic nerve and the rest of your brain delineate between white versus black with this test? So if your optic nerve is covered with garbage, metal, chemicals, mold, biofilm, the bad biofilm from the mold, etc., etc. If that optic nerve is toxic and sick, you won't have a very easy time, determining these lines and if they're going straight left or right. So as you can see down here, it gets harder and harder to see, what that is. Now this work was done at the NIH, right? And this is a very good test for brain toxicity, and it's free, right there. Now, there's also one on this website, survivingmold.com, and I'm a fan of Dr. Shoemaker, who's at that website. Now, when you do it in my office, it's got to be 18 inches away from your face. So we have this thing, and you can hold it up against your chin like that, and that's how we do the test. You do one eye, then you do the other eye, and we keep track of your success on that, or your results. Okay, simple, easy test, very valuable. Okay, this test is a balance test, and the name sounds fancy, but it's a balance test. And you stand up on the balls of your feet, and you're bouncing between that and your toes. And you close your eyes, and you should be able to stay balanced without falling down for 15 seconds. And I failed this test 6 months ago, and then now I can pass it. Okay. Yeah. And it's best to have somebody with you so they can catch you if you fall, and they have to time you also. Okay. So the balance is in the cerebellum. That's where the balance mechanism is. And when you're starting to fall, it feels like somebody's behind you pushing you. Yeah. So if you try it yourself and you're like, oh my God, who's that behind me pushing me? It's your cerebellum. Okay. It's pretty dramatic. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Postprandial insulin. Okay, we mentioned, my slides are a little bit out of order, but I'm going to go back to this postprandial insulin. Indicates ketosis. Okay, so high insulin indicates what's called metabolic mayhem. And can you turn the air conditioner on? And then ketosis is a low insulin diet. So if your insulin's too high, you can bring it down with ketosis. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, now let's get into this coronary artery calcium score. It is not a risk factor. It is the disease. LDL testing, you've heard of LDL cholesterol, has been abandoned by modern lipidologists since its correlation to heart disease is so low. There's research now where they don't even include it when they're comparing various tests. It's not even in the studies. And so half the people who have heart attacks have normal cholesterol anyways. It means nothing. Okay. Now the CAC test, it's only 2 minutes or so in a CT scan. So you lay on your back and they send you in. They tell you to breathe, hold your breath. They do a couple practice sessions, I think. I think they were practicing with me, training me. And then the third time, I think they did the real one. If they inject a dye into your arm, that's not the right test. And now they're charging you $700. Okay. when you go to St. Joe's here, pay cash. You pay them $100 cash. And some people have told me that their insurance paid for it. Well, fine, that's great. And a score of 0 guarantees no heart attack in 15 years. So here's the scores right here. So 0 is no risk at all. And then when you get above 400, high risk. Now I've had patients whose scores are 3,000, 4,000, right, and they have a lot of work to do. And absolutely you want to get into ketosis. And so think of ketosis as the body being fat fluid and slippery, and the calcium embedded in your chest, in your heart, arteries, becomes ionizable and leaves the tissue, goes into your blood, and goes out of your body through your kidneys. Or maybe your body will put it back in your bones, because there's people with osteoporosis and they have calcified arteries and gallstones and kidney stones. So why is it that their calcium is leaving the bones and going into the other soft tissue? It's because they're eating sugar. The carbs are too high. The carbs plus protein is too high. And that makes the body confused on what to do with calcium. So when you go into ketosis, your body's filled as fat fluid, then a lot of things normalize. Hormones normalize, minerals, where the minerals are, that gets normalized. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have some success with a few people where their CAC is coming down. And it's not enough for me to talk about in detail, because it's only been I've only been working with this for 9-10 months. So I got a number of people doing a protocol of supplements plus ketosis, and we'll see what happens with these scores, and as they start to roll in, I'll do a video about it. Okay, I'm going to move on. I did. I took this test, and my score was 0. Yeah, that was earlier this year. So here's the CAC distribution in men. Anybody, guys under the age of 30 have a score of 0. 90% of them have a score of 0. And then by the time the guy is over the age of 70, only 3% have a score of 0. And that's just our standard American diet. Okay, and you can see the green one goes down, and then the red is a score over 400, and beginning about the age of 49 or 45, that red is starting to climb up. So the concept here is decades. The standard American diet takes decades to kill you. Okay, it may taste good and be convenient, but it's deadly. And the standard American diet ratio of fats versus protein plus carbs is it's 1 to 4. Okay, so that's the protein plus carbs. And in standard dietetics, they think that this is a high-fat diet, when absolutely it's not. You can see the fat is lower than the protein plus carbs. Okay, now a bad low-fat, high-fiber diet is 1 to 6. That's even worse. Okay? So, like I said, you want to get to 2 to 1 ratio, 2 to 1, or you can do 4 to 1. Okay. Alright, I'm moving on. Okay, this is a test to measure inflammation through the urine. And we sell it for $10 on our website, and when you do it here in the office, we charge $20. You can just buy it at the front desk and take it home. So you pee in the cup a little bit, then you take this pipette, and you get a small measured amount into here, and then you put it in this little vial, and there's a liquid in there, a reagent. You add the urine to it, give it a little shake, and then you compare how red does that reagent become. And if it's very deep red, it means you have a lot of inflammation in your body. And if it's a lighter red, then you have less. It's more like the depth of the color. So you have less inflammation over here. Okay. So over here would be bad, and over here would be bad too. All right. You want to be closer towards the middle. Okay. All right. You want to have some activity. You want to have some inflammation. You want to have some white blood cell movement and immune system strength. If you were here, you wouldn't have any bullets for your white blood cells. Okay?
If it's high, does that mean you don't have to go to those?
No, if it's high, it's just inflammation. Okay. All right. So there's no blood test that can compare with this. So simple, and you get the results instantly. All right. We just have a couple more slides. I said my slides are a little bit out of order. I'm sorry. We're getting back to the coronary artery calcium score. This is great. It's going on YouTube. I'm sorry. So this just shows the CT score, this coronary artery calcium score, will show abnormal, 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 this stage of plaquing. It measures the calcium, that's the white, and it measures the fatty plaquing too. Okay, but the stress test doesn't find this, or this. Just talking about symptoms doesn't find that. Obstruction here would be only 20% obstruction. It still shows up on the coronary artery calcium score. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to talk about mold testing, then I'm going to talk about muscle testing. So so I had my own personal experience. Right around that corner, I got a little office. The window has been leaking for 11 years. We created this space, and I moved into it. And then about a year later, I started getting heart problems. By February of 2016, I was having high blood pressure and left chest pain and left arm pain and left jaw pain, and it was a total mess. Long story short, it was mold from that leaky window. So there are, and this is again is completely ignored by 99.5% of all medical doctors. And so that's why you have to be your own detective. And if you find it in your body, don't even bother going to them because they don't have anything good for you to take care of it with. You got to go the natural route. So there's an IgG test. That means how is your immune system reacting to mold when they add mold to it in the lab. Okay, so out of 14 molds, I was reacting to 13. Okay, and there's also IgE test. Okay, now there's another lab in Texas. They measure mycotoxins. So mold is bad, but mold makes toxins. Those are called mycotoxins. Now I'm dealing with two things. You're dealing with two things if you have mold. And this is $700 for the first test. It's the only place in the nation that does this testing. There was a second place, but they went out of business last year. Follow-up tests are $350. Okay, and they measure 4 mycotoxins, and those are all bad. Okay, and then when you test a building, like in Ann Arbor, there's ProTech and there's Mold Pro, and there's another place in Troy, Michigan called Sanit Air, and they all have different qualifications and competencies for measuring mold. But when you hire somebody to test your house or your office, they usually just capture the air and they test the air samples. And that's like step 1. But you can have low mold in your air, but you have dust, mycotoxins along the corner of the rooms. That shows chronicity, so if that tests high, then that's another valuable test. Okay, so a testing company can test carpet, paper, computers, the keyboards, below, under the keys and stuff like that. There can be mold dust settling in there. They can test the moisture in the drywall. So against that window, along either side of it, it's wet. And the wetness goes all the way down to the floor. But just looking at it, you can't find it. Going like this, you won't find it. You got to put these probes in there and it measures moisture. If drywall is wet for 24 hours, it's growing mold. And it's super easy to grow Aspergillus niger. That's black mold. Okay, Stachybotrys is also another form of black mold. Okay. They can do microscopic samples and culturable samples, meaning they grow it in a petri dish. I wrote here, most companies will just test the air. Okay, and that's like step 1. That's only step 1. Okay, and then the other thing is you got to find out where it's at. Where is it coming from? Because I tested an office down the road on Jackson Road here. I'm looking to move into this office. That deal fell through. But it's 2 suites. So I had a guy come out, he tested the air. One of the suites was high in mold, black mold. And so we told the landlords, and it turns out there are a couple medical doctors in Chicago. They have never talked to me since. I'm like, look, you got black mold. No word back from them at all. But the point is, the guy who tested the air created a proposal to remediate the suite. So he's going to wash the floor, and he's going to put biocide on the walls and wipe down the walls. And he's going to charge like $2,500 for that. And I'm like, where's the mold coming from? You got to find it, like that's like treating symptoms. So I was in there and I found it. And I found where the roof was leaking, and I found where the window didn't have proper sealant, and the water's going down through the corners of the window. So there was 2 locations for where moisture's coming in. And I'm not a building inspector, but I found it. Okay, this is the last slide. This is muscle testing. So this is where the patient holds their arm up. Brandy. Yeah or no? Okay. Stand right here. Okay, hold your... Huh?
You're lovely assistant.
Yeah. Okay, scoot that way a little bit, and then turn a little bit towards, just good. Hold your right arm up. Okay, so I push down on her arm, give me strength. Good, and then we do something to the body. I could step on her foot like that, and her arm would go weak. All right? Or maybe I could just touch her thyroid, and her arm might go weak. So whatever I do is a stress to the body. Now, if the thyroid's all, like inflamed and sick and tired, and I touch it, the arm goes weak. But if it's strong and healthy, I touch it and the body doesn't care. And I can poke at it and tap at it and do this, and the arm is still strong. So I know that the thyroid is doing pretty well. And then we can also do the lab tests and thyroid and all that stuff. So the muscle testing is not like the whole thing that we do. We look at other tests, but this is super simple. I've been doing it since 1998, and I did it blindly for a year. And after that year of experimenting, I decided that I will do muscle testing for my career, as part of my career. Okay, so hold your arm up. Now the main test for lactic acidosis, which I have videos about, which is the mechanism of chronic disease, is touching the tip of the tongue. So go ahead and touch the tip of your tongue. Good, and that's strong. Now use the back of your hand against the tip of your tongue, like that. Okay, good. So thanks. Thank you very much. So now why the tip of the tongue? That's where the sweet taste buds are. I learned this in the late 90s, and I have been doing it and then not doing it and then doing it since I first learned it. So if this goes weak, then I know that those sweet taste buds are tired because you're eating sugar, and therefore you're deficient in B vitamins. And when you're deficient in B vitamins, your nervous system is sick, and you get lactic acidosis, right? The mechanism of chronic disease. Now, when I figured out lactic acidosis a year ago, I had a bunch of patients with symptoms. They were stuck with their symptoms, and I fixed them all like boom, 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 like that. And it's been great ever since. Better results than ever before. So this guy came in, and I've been seeing him for 8 years. And when I tested him, that was weak. And I found that he needed a supplement called Cataplex B. I got a video called King of All Supplements. And I said, oh, you need Cataplex B. He goes, yeah, that's what I took 8 years ago when I first came in. I was on 30 a day. So I looked back in his file, and sure enough, one of the first visit or second visit, I put him on 32 Cataplex B a day. And all of his symptoms went away. He's got a high stress job. He appraises hotels. So he'll fly to California, look at a hotel for 10 minutes, write down a number, and he's got to fly back. And he's had to make some big decisions regarding his career, especially in 08 and 09 during that crash. Okay, so I look back at his file, and he did better and better for the next 6-7 months, 8 years ago, and then came Thanksgiving and Christmas, and he ate a lot of sugar back then, and when he saw me again in January the following year, he felt a lot worse. And I said, what's going on? He said, oh, my diet's bad. And I tested him for Cataplex B again, and he needed a lot more. And then after a few months, he was done. And he felt good, and he was strong, and everything was really good. So now I see him like once every 3-4 months or whatever. That's been going on for years. So when I tested him last year, and this was weak, I said, you need this. He goes, yeah, I was on that a while ago. He said, yeah, I feel like I did 8 years ago. He was weak, he was tired, he was having, stomach problems and all these symptoms. So for him and many other people, just taking Cataplex B to fix lactic acidosis has been the savior. Okay? Now, what's interesting is that sometimes it's not the tip of the tongue. Sometimes it's the jaw, like here or here or here. There are people who have jaw pain like I did, right? And it's related to the heart function. So, you could have chest pain and it goes up the jaw or it goes down the arm. But I've had 2 women, one had jaw pain here, the other one had jaw pain here. Cataplex B fixed it. Alright, so that's just a unique point. It's interesting when, doing the muscle testing, like this could be weak, or this could be weak, or the tip of the tongue could be weak. And it's still the same thing, it's lactic acidosis. Alright, and the need for Cataplex B. Now, if you notice, when I tested Brandy, it was the tip of her tongue with the fingertip, and then I used the back of the hand. Why is that? Because this is positive and this is negative. And it does matter. It does matter. And so, anyways, this is my favorite reflex. And I know a lot of different, tests with this muscle testing to see if the arm goes down or if it stays up. But I get so many people, when that tip of the tongue is weak, I click my heels. I jump up, and I click my heels, because I know I'm going to get that person better. All right. Did you see that? Do you want to pan down while Okay, cool. So it's 7:45. Let's cut the feed. Let's cut the video. Thanks for watching. Okay, good.